My dear brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ, today we have entered the 13th Sunday of the ordinary week. For today's reflection, we have the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 10, verses 37 to 42, where we have the conditions of disciples given by Jesus, as well as the rewards that we will receive if we are being hospitable to our fellow human beings. Now, when we look into this chapter, the verse 37 tells, whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Now, what does Jesus mean? Certainly, when we look at these words of Jesus, we will think that Jesus is presenting before us some harsh teaching or which is something unnatural. No, my dear brothers and sisters, when we look deeply into these words and study, Jesus is telling the right thing what you and I have to do it. What Jesus is telling? Jesus is telling, give priority for God, who is the source of all resources. And therefore, first pay attention in respecting and loving God. We ought to love God and love Jesus more than anybody else. Now, we might ask, how? How is that? Say, for an example, if you are taking a class and you are asking the children, from where do we get water? Children can give us various answers. A child may say, from the well. Another child might say, from the dam. Another child may say, from the river. They all are right. But do well, dam, or river the source of water? No, they are only the container of water. Say for an example, the well contains water, the dam contains water, the river channelizes the flow of the water through its two banks. Now, where do water come from? And there the question rises. The water comes from, not from the well, not from the dam, not from the river, the source is somewhere else. We might call it rain, we might call it the earth contains the water, but who provides it? Some might call it some supernatural power. From the supernatural power we receive the rain. But we call it God. God is the provider of the rain. And similarly, our parents only biologically gave birth to us. But who decided that we should be born of our parents is ultimately God. That God only created them also, and through them he created us also. And therefore, the first person who is the provider or the source or the beginner of something or the maker of something, he has to be loved more than the created things. We all are created beings. So we need to pay more attention towards the maker, towards the created. Therefore, only we have in the 10 commandments, the first 3 commandments pays attention towards the creator of God. And then only comes to paying attention towards the parents. Honoring the parents comes next. And therefore, Jesus is right in saying that whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And therefore, to do this one, what Jesus is telling in the next words, whoever does not take up his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. When we go to love God, we take up the cross. And therefore, when we take up the cross, we have to lose our identity. And therefore, only verse 39 is telling, whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, in through these verses, Jesus is telling that we have to lose our identity, we have to do sacrifice. Now, coming to the next teaching of Jesus, verse 42, is speaking of hospitality. And then there is some rewards for being hospitable. And therefore, only Jesus is telling in verse 40, whoever receives you receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. And coming to 42, and he is telling, whoever gives only a cup of cold water to one of these little ones to drink, because he is a disciple of me, I say to you, he will surely not lose his reward. And therefore, there is something awaiting for us as reward when we do something hospitable. When we are hospitable or charitable, there is some reward waiting for us. And that's why Jesus is telling further in Luke's Gospel, chapter 6, verse 38. What Jesus is telling in 38. Give, and gifts will be given unto you. A good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing will be poured out into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will in return be measured out to you. And that is what? It will be poured unto us, given to us more than what we have given. And that's what rightly we see in today's first reading, taken from the second book of Kings, chapter 4, verses 1 to 16, where we read, the prophet Elisha, for the hospitality that he received from a Shunammite woman, he is promising her in verse 16, this time next year, you will be fondling a baby son, which is she never forethought, never foresee, never she imagined that this barren lady one day will be a mother. She should not ask of her own request. Rather, the prophet, for having received hospitality, for her charitable act, he openly comes out and offers unimaginable gift. And that's what St. Paul is also telling in chapter 2, the letter to the First Corinthians, chapter 2, verse 9. He is telling, but as it is written, what eye has not seen, and ear has not heard, and what has not entered the human heart, what God has prepared for those who love him. And therefore, those who love him, or those who are charitable towards God and towards neighbor, God is promising some unimaginable rewards that eye has not seen, the ear has not heard, and what has not entered the human heart and mind. That is unimaginable gift Jesus, our God, is going to give us for being charitable. And therefore only Paul is telling, God always blesses a cheerful giver. And therefore only Peter is telling, charity covers multitude of sins. And therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, today's gospel is presenting before us a challenge to come out of the present modern world of living. And Jesus is presenting another teaching, another setting. Setting is that we forget the world where we are living and we concentrate more on the world, next world to come. And therefore, Jesus is telling, your reward will be greater in heaven. If you do little thing, for that, into our laps will be poured and shaken more than what we have given. And therefore, it is calling us to be charitable. So what we can conclude from today's gospel, Jesus is presenting before us the conditions of discipleship. What is the condition? We should love God more than anybody or anything. And we should take up the cross, and we should lose our own identity. That means we should sacrifice our life. And fourth, we need to be more charitable towards our fellow human beings. How? By giving whatever we have, thinking that these things will perish, and we will receive a higher reward. As Saint Paul points out, what the eye has not seen, ear has not heard, and what has not entered the heart or mind of man, God is going to give us. That's why in chapter 33, verse 3 of Jeremiah, Jeremiah is telling us, He will reveal to us when we call to Him the hidden treasures. Hidden treasure means that is not known to the world till date. See, God is going to give us. Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, let us look into ourselves. Whom do we love more? Do we love God or more the worldly things or the worldly persons? If you are loving more the world or worldly persons, let us change ourselves. Let us take U-turn in our life and go to God, who has to be loved, who ought to be loved, who has to be obeyed more than anybody else. And let us decide to take up the cross and follow Jesus by sacrificing our lives through the acts of charity, because the acts of charity covers multitude of sins. Amen.